Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our October 16th meeting of the EAC. First order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from the last meeting, which I just sent out recently. Hopefully everyone got a chance to look at them briefly. All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Great. Minutes are approved.
All right.
All right, so we have a few things on the agenda for tonight. The main item that Rob brought up is discussion of an application that's been submitted to the zoning hearing board for 13 Elmwood and the potential environmental impacts that are associated with that. So Rob, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, Rob, what is
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. There isn't a lot of information yet that's formalized. An application supposedly has been submitted for a major development of a residential unit adjacent to the R5. And it's where the used to be the Spinelli landscaping operations was, and they had, which is an elongated, like an L-shaped property that connects with Mr. Spinelli's residence and lot at 13 Elmwood. It is a site that the reason that I found this interesting was that Narberth has a lot of stormwater issues, as we know. And this site is an area where there's a lot of rainwater collection and conduction, and where there are some flooding issues. The property is actually a commercial operation for several decades. And it is reverting back to B3, I guess, is the code, or 3B or B3. And so Elmwood's a hot area for development right now. So I guess is it Raider or Ryder Homes?
I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
They have several, they've constructed a few homes on Sabine Avenue. And this one would be similar to what's at 10 Sabine. But the property itself would be reverting from commercial use to residential use. They need special exception and variances to allow for the construction of a 3-story detached single family dwelling with porches, et cetera, et cetera. I've seen just a mock-up of what it would look like, what's fine. But the property itself, having been commercial for several decades and being used for storage of vehicles and imported soils, et cetera, the elevations of the property aren't what they originally were. And there may have to be testing on the site. A lot of the meeting on October 24th, before the zoning hearing board, is to look at variances, which are how you orient this project on the site. And without the variances, they wouldn't be able to construct anything. So that's where we are at present. I spoke to Kevin Walsh briefly to find out what was going to happen on the 24th, and it's really about zoning. And then that, let's see, Eric Johnson's going to be, from Pannoni, is going to be the project engineer from our end. And then the property is under contract with the original owner. So until the zoning hearing is completed. The problem right now is that water backs up. We have like a mini wet area. You can't really call it a wetland because it's been disturbed so much, but we have, it's a big like bamboo grove, but it collects water, and then the water backs up from the R5 from the property and back and neighboring properties onto a number of properties. The water conducts through the driveway, the egress onto the property, which is next to 19 Elmwood. So there's this whole issue of, well, what happens during the development with stormwater that now all funnels onto Elmwood Avenue and down to the end of the block into the creek. And whether, what will happen to it in the future. But reason I thought I would bring it up before the EAC is that, and I have to say I'm an interested party because our property abuts the site, is that the elevations decrease all the way down to the creek along Elmwood Avenue. And there's water that conveys at the base of the R5. And I thought, well, this might be a great opportunity to somehow swale it with neighbors cooperating, because nobody wants the water really, to swale it down to the creek and the new stormwater control area, instead of sending it along the road. And some of it would get to be absorbed back into the water table. You'd be able to have maybe some rain gardens. I'm just throwing these things out. And maybe the Conservancy would be interested in being involved in this process. But that's an issue. The other thing is that putting houses now adjacent to the R5, it's quite a wildlife transit zone. We get deer, we have fox, we have, woodchucks, we have, raccoon. You have everything, and they transit along the R5. And if you're putting up light standards and other things, you're going to disrupt maybe wildlife transit, birds, everything else. Sort of like a nature preserve, because nobody really walks in that area. But it's...
So Rob, I guess that property we were talking about with the Amtrak R5, whatever, that's similar to what the Planning Commission is bumping into with the new Elm Grove Park, right? When they come up with that park idea, they're going to be doing how much they're going to cut back into those woods towards that track, right?
Right.
So it's a similar situation then.
Well, it's actually the landowner is put up for sale the property behind 13 Elmwood and 19 Elmwood, and a tract there which he controls, and then extends it across his property at I think he's actually 99 Elmwood, because his house was developed after most of the construction in the neighborhood. It's a more modern house.
So the planning, is there a picture, an elevation or something of the property back in there?
Nothing yet. Well, only thing is that the realtor assigned to it just showed the property. It's L-shaped, and it would have a long driveway next to 19 Elmwood, and where there's an existing gravel egress, which was for Spinelli and Sons landscaping originally. So that's always been the conduit for water. And they have other issues because they're going to have to establish electricity where there is none, and then sewer, water, everything. And my understanding is that most of that might have to come out along the driveway. So there's a lot of infrastructure that they'll be discussing. And then the variances are just how to site this house. It's about 3,900 square feet, I think 3,850. 3-story, your typical New Narberth style home with a attached garage. And but it's really the transit of the stormwater and maybe impact on the wildlife back there and whether there are the soils have to be tested, before disrupting the site. I talked with Kevin briefly on that. So, and I have not heard back from Eric Johnson. So the hearing's on the 24th, so we have a few days here to decide. I would think if EAC wants to just put in a note that we're interested in looking at this.
Rob, I have a question. The issues that the zoning hearing board are going to address on the 24th have to do with the orientation of the building and things like that. Do they all, I guess either at that hearing or just generally with the development, do they need to address stormwater management issues and those kinds of things?
Not at this one, because they just have to figure out if there can be a variance as to how the house is going to be, the dwelling is going to be oriented on the site, because it would be atypical of what is within the code. And so they have to see, well, would it fit? And then would they allow the variances, at which point then it becomes a permitting. It goes on to the engineers and they draw up their site plans.
I'm just wondering if it makes the most. So I think one thing we could do if we want to is, and Rob, I think you'd be the person to do this, write up a short summary of the potential environmental impacts that we could pass along to the zoning hearing board. But I don't know that, I wonder if it's outside the scope of what they're addressing in terms of the variances that are being requested.
At this first meeting, yes. But it's good that they know in advance that we have an interest. And as a matter of fact, the developer has a track record of, talking with the neighbors and with committees as to how best to get approvals. So, you talk behind the scenes rather than creating a problem where there may not be one.
Right.
It also came to my attention that it's a dark area, and we kind of like it that way because we have our little, it's wildlife and backs up against the R5. But there are other properties, and at some point, people have the option of developing parts of their property within the new zoning regs. And we might end up with people, proposing to build, and then we've got a lighting that's shining on the R5 and impacting what is, I would call it a wildlife habitat of sorts. It's a transit, and it goes down, follows the park as well. So that whole corridor is the transit zone. So we had talked the other week about lighting, just in passing, and maybe this is something that might jog us to address.
Thoughts?
Yeah, what's it having stormwater on the green building codes and all that? There's a lot from there.
So in the green, for the green building bonus, but I don't think that would apply here because they're not. Well, I guess I don't know. I think there's generally sort of, Robin, you probably know more about this than I do about sort of what has to happen in terms of stormwater management for any development.
Well, they have to address, the grading will be the first issue. And since this was, decades ago that it was converted over to commercial, and they had vehicles back there that they wanted gravel and a firm site for parking their trucks and not being flooded out. So the borough has to decide. One of the issues will be, what do we do? Do they have to remove that material and
But all-
restore the original contours for stormwater? What does
And
that
all that
mean?
would be determined though, assuming the zoning hearing board grants the variances, the orientation of the building and all that.
Right. That would be secondary and probably a follow-up after, because there are no engineering plans at this point. They're really just trying to find out. If they get the variances, then they know that they can construct. And I don't think anybody is really opposed to this proposal and the construction. It's just, this may be a good opportunity to redirect some stormwater. And then a lot of these residential developments, like across the street, are using detention, like a dual detention system where they have one tank or riprap, and then it's they're at two different levels, and then they pump the water from one system to another. They collect all the water off the roof line and direct it to these cisterns in the back of the property. So we have two of the properties have done that. And I haven't seen them in action because it's all new. But so I can't see how successful, don't know how successful it is, but I thought, gee, this might be an opportunity to look at storm rainwater gardens, conceptually, I was thinking they could extend down the block right at the easement. And it could be something that Lower Merion Conservancy might have an opinion on, and we might be able to get concurrence from the property owners. That's sort of pie in the sky at this moment, but that would be the optimal solution in my mind. And it takes the water off the street. And I know we have a project that is supposedly on the boards for correcting the runoff at the end of Elmwood Avenue into the creek. So it's sort of a juggernaut for water coming across from Lower Merion and Arbor's input. So it makes a lot of sense, a lot of turbidity there.
Was that part of what they were doing in the Parks project? What they looking
And the whole parks plan,
It might be.
Wasn't that part of it?
Might be. So I would suggest maybe, Rob, if you could write up a short summary of the potential impacts and these potential opportunities, like even if it's a pie in the sky idea, so we can at least get that written down, and then we can pass along that information. We can see what develops from there.
Yeah.
I'd be
happy to do that. And I know that the abutting neighbors are interested in what happens, and so it's not just us as an interested party, but there are opportunities here more than anything to solve an issue that we have and actually utilize our new park.
Yep. Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Rob.
You're welcome.
Great. That's our main. A few other updates on some other things. That was the main discussion item. We'll come back to the discussion of the elastomeric coatings at a later date. The other two things I just wanted to mention to everyone. One, there's still this ongoing discussion about phasing out gas-powered leaf blowers, possibly thinking about that at a regional level rather than each municipality doing it individually. I sent you guys some emails. Ellie Kearns at Penn Environment is organizing a group if anyone's willing to take the lead on that, or at least attend that group's meetings so that we're in the loop, that would be great. We're kind of in a holding pattern because we were waiting to see what Lower Marion decided anyway. But if something happens at the regional level, we could potentially be a part of that also.
So you have Lower Marion's involved in this, if they've been.
Yeah, they're yes, they are.
They're gonna be participating in
I think
this?
so. I found out about it via Lower Marion, so I assume they're participating. Yeah.
This is the Zoom.
This is the Zoom on October 30th. Is the first one. So anyone's interested in attending the meetings and just, keeping us updated on what they're discussing. I don't know how often they're going to meet.
That was gonna be my question, like, I'm happy to go, I'm looking at my calendar.
I don't know if it's been determined yet. I mean, if anyone can at least go to the first meeting.
I can do that, yeah,
And then you can get some sense of that. That would be great.
okay.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Chad.
Sure.
The other thing I put on the agenda was to talk about sort of plans for 2025. I mentioned specifically sort of updating our greenhouse gas emissions inventory. I had a meeting with ICLEI earlier this week, and they're rolling out some new tools for an updated ClearPath, which will have new calculators that we can use for our emissions tracking. Rob, you might have mentioned that you were interested in finding out more about that. And that would be great. Do you guys, I guess, what do you guys think about that as a goal? Because one of the things I'm thinking of this as kind of a progress report on the Climate Action Plan. We're 5 years out from the Climate Action Plan next year. The extent to which we can update our entire greenhouse gas emissions inventory is partly dependent on data we get from DVRPC, which we relied a lot on the Climate Action Plan. They may or may not have updated data, but we can find out. And then there might be some other strategies we can talk about that didn't make it to the Climate Action Plan before. So it's kind of like an interim sort of progress report from the Climate Action Plan. Do you guys think that's worth pursuing for next year as a big project? You're muted, Rob.
Yes, I think it's worth pursuing, and as I said, I'd be willing to participate and assist, but as a team member, not in the lead role, because my schedule doesn't permit that.
Right. One thing, Rob, if you would be interested, one thing that I think would be really helpful is ICLEI is rolling out these new ClearPath tools, and they're going to have a series of, I think, webinars to sort of introduce them to the members. I can send you some information about that if you could maybe connect with them and be our liaison between us and ICLEI in terms of using the new tools. That would be great.
I did that in the past, and I found it really useful. I'm curious about the new tools because I think they're going to be much more sophisticated because this is the second round.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see what the other boroughs are presenting and how it might play into what we have planned for our little electrical grid here. So.
Okay, great. Well, Rob, I'll try and get you connected with the folks at ICLEI then to find out more about that and see what we can do with that. And hopefully we can plan to do something for next year based on that.
That'd be great. What was the first date of, I don't have the notes here. What was the first date of the get together, the Zoom?
For the leaf blowers?
No, for ICLEI.
ICLEI? I don't know off the top of my head, but I'll look it up and send it to you.
Okay. The leaf blower's on October 30th, correct?
Correct. And I sent that one out to everyone. Yes.
This is like, like a technical moron. I don't see a Zoom.
I think it might have been a Google Meet. It was sent as a Google meeting invite.
5 to 6.
I see all that, but I don't see like the link to the Google Meet, and I wasn't formally invited, so I wonder if I just RSVP'd, but I think I RSVP'd as you maybe. I don't know.
Oh, that's possible, and that's fine.
So can you just forward it to me when we get it?
I will do that.
Joe's email
We'll figure it out.
Okay. But I've got it on my calendar. I'm
Great.
happy to go.
Thanks.
I would want to jump on that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Penn Environment, that's where we got the sample ordinance from. So they're the ones organizing all this.
Who was that?
Penn Environment.
Okay.
So I think that would be a very helpful
So
resource.
Dawn's on this.
Yeah, oh, good.
Dawn was really, Joe, Joe.
Um,
Oh, what's your name? Lord Mayor?
Nancy.
No,
Oh,
P,
Paloma. Yeah.
Paloma.
All right. I don't have anything else on the agenda. Do you guys have any other items to discuss?
Not the moment. Coatings next meeting.
What was the,
Great.
what were we, I remember talking a little bit about the coatings. What was the next piece of the conversation, just to get a sense of like the cost?
Rob's going to look into the costs and give some more detailed presentation that hopefully then we could then give to
Gotcha.
other entities.
Yeah, I'm hoping to have something, I like our return on investment. So I want to spreadsheet a few things and look at the different sources of information. I have at least 3 or 4 cities that have used it, their data, and then trying to dig up a little more, just seeing what the cost is actually of the materials and what they can be used on, so that I can answer. The write-up will answer the basic questions for which buildings could use them. Could you use them on playgrounds? Can you? How versatile is it?
Having to recode and all that kind of, like how often you need to reapply and all that sort of good stuff.
And you actually, last meeting I was talking about how I was in the Honeck Center at Jefferson, and if you look on the adjoining buildings, you can see the old structures, if they're not well drained, you get a lot of grease, dirt that congregates on the coatings, and it's like, well, what's the point? So you really have to have an operations budget and maintenance. So I'm trying to talk with the individual who leads the effort at Lower Marion High School, because from the satellite shots, you could eat off the top of the building. It's a beautiful job, and there's acreage there too.
All right. Anything else?
Not from this end.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks,
It's all right. Thanks, Joe.
Good to see you, Chad. Lee, I don't see you, but I know you're there.